In a world where convenience became the enemy of survival, humanity indulges in excess, consumed by processed foods, unaware of the impending doom that lurked beneath its wrappers. One man, an unlikely hero, would rise to defy the insatiable appetites of the masses. As the world falls into chaos, Brown embarks on a journey to spread the truth about the dangers of ultra-processed foods. He fights to awaken the world from its gluttonous slumber. But the path to enlightenment was fraught with peril. Will Brown succeed in preserving humanity's existence for the next 100 years? Welcome to the Wellness Journey Project.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Wellness Journey Project. And we're going to be talking about processed foods and really just starting your wellness journey and how I started my wellness journey. So for my background, I am a nurse. Primarily, I would say that I have gotten the majority of my training as an emergency room nurse. But I did work on a transplant unit, and I went into management later in my career. And one of the things that I noticed most frequent in the hospital was people coming into the emergency department with diabetes type 2, hypertension, and end-stage renal disease. I was always hyper aware of my health for the most part, but then I reached a point in my life where I wasn't so hyper aware. I became overweight, constantly anxious, often depressed, and I had my aha moment when I realized that I have to oxygenate myself before I oxygenate somebody else. And what does that mean? So I was a flight attendant for a very short time, and one of the things that they kind of teach you is if there is a need for oxygen, if the oxygen masks do come down, that you're supposed to oxygenate yourself. You're supposed to put your mask on first before you put it on even your child. So that always stuck with me. So essentially what I did was I put my mask on first, and I said to myself, I can't be a good father, I can't be a good husband, I can't be a good son, I can't be a good nurse, I can't be a good manager, I can't be a good me if I am not at my 100%. And so I started to look at the things that made me not at my 100%, right? And so one of the things that was very much so at the forefront of the things I needed to change was my diet. I'm not saying that I always had a bad diet. I didn't. I pretty much knew the difference between right and wrong. I pretty much had a very much health conscious mother who, taught me a lot. But it's funny because although I'm a nurse, although I'm someone who is supposed to be healthy and teaching about health and educating people about health, I wasn't healthy myself. And I just found that weird. I found that uncomforting. So what I started to do was I started to look at the things that were making me unhealthy. So food was a big thing, right? It's not just any food, right? It's the ultra-processed foods. Now, what do I mean by ultra-processed? Because if you've been following me on social media, I've just been mentioning processed foods. And I just want to highlight here that there's a difference between processed foods and ultra-processed foods. So there's a spectrum, right? And so you have your minimally processed foods, and then you have your ultra-processed foods. And the reality is that most of our diets consist of primarily processed foods. And the scary part is as you get younger, well, not as you get younger, but as you look at people that are younger, primarily the age groups of teenagers and young adults, a lot of their food intake is ultra processed because of the world that we live in, because it's capitalistic, because there's a lot of people with eating disorders, because that's just the way they ate since they were born. It's extremely hard to avoid processed foods. It's almost become a staple of a developed country's diet, right? And so what that ultimately means is that you're giving yourself a slow death instead of quickly. Now, some might argue, well, it's better to kill yourself slowly than quickly, but how about not killing yourself at all? How about giving yourself the best opportunity that you can give it so you can be the greatest version of yourself? My goal here is to talk about becoming the best version of yourself, and not so much starting with eating, but including eating into that process, right? And so just hear me out. If you were to say to yourself, I'm going to make a change, I'm going to eat less processed foods, and I'm going to replace that with plant-based whole foods that aren't really processed, aren't ultra processed, right? Now, some people, particularly the meat eaters, are going to say, well, what about meat? What about your protein? And I'm going to probably say something that might surprise a lot of you. I honestly don't see anything wrong with eating meat, aside from the people that feel like, all right, you're killing animals, and I get that whole argument. I do believe that animals are meant to be eaten sometimes. I do, especially in times of famine like our ancestors did. But I don't believe that we should be eating meat every day. I don't particularly believe that the human body is designed to eat meat every day. Now, hey, we can argue on that, but at the end of the day, I do believe that that is a subjective decision. So if you're someone who eats meat every day, here's my suggestion. I think you should look for meat that is not processed, right? So again, we're going to the processed meat, or just the processed food conversation in general. So there's a difference between meat that you can get from a slaughterhouse, that the animal is raised in a farm that is free range. They're not in cages or just in these harsh conditions, versus you're going to get some meat from the supermarket that is pumped with hormones from a cow that is fed wheat or soy. And so you see what I'm getting at? Like all of those things matter. And so the more processed your food is, essentially the more dangerous it is for you. And there's a number of reasons why that is. But the primary reasons that I like to mention is because they don't contain the nutrients that our body wants, that our body loves, that our body needs, right? They don't contain them. And so when the bulk of your diet is consisted of nutrient-less foods, you're essentially malnourishing yourself slowly. So what did I do? Once I noticed that I had to make a change. So we mentioned that I avoided ultra-processed foods, and that's just what I did. And I replaced them with plants, primarily plants, whole plants, a lot of watermelons, a lot of grapes, salads, sourdough bread. I don't eat any wheat bread or anything like that, no processed bread at all. And I started noticing a lot of things. Obviously, I noticed weight. I started slimming down a lot. I was peeing a lot. And to me, that meant that I was getting rid of a lot of the toxins that was in my body. And also, I was, drinking more. So that was had something to do with it. So I had a lot more volume for my body to work with. But I had energy, right? I had lots of it. And I just felt like a kid again. I felt vibrant. I felt almost radiating. Like, that part, that movie scene in The Last Dragon where Leroy is saying, I'm the master, and he's glowing. like I felt like I had that glow, and I started to feel that glow on a daily basis. I didn't feel like I didn't want to wake up in the morning. I didn't feel like when I had a stressful situation that I would completely just shut down and panic. I felt like I had the tenacity and the endurance to work through whatever issues that I was working with throughout the day. Being a nurse, that's super, super important to do. I noticed that I had more energy with my kids. I was more present. I was more aware of my feelings and their feelings. there's just so many changes that I noticed since I've been giving up ultra processed foods. And I just want everyone to take away from this episode that there's an overabundance of over-processed foods. I mean, you see it when you drive by your supermarket, you see it when you go to the corner store, you see it in the airport, you see it when you're traveling to work via train, you see it in the train station. Like, you see it everywhere, right? Ultra-processed food is everywhere. But why is it everywhere? I mean, it's obvious why, people don't know it's dangerous, and it's also very lucrative to certain people, right? You might not be aware that your food is harming you. You might not be aware that, certain lifestyle changes are harming you. I think you can start to make changes once you do become aware. When you know that there's an overabundance of ultra-processed foods at your disposal, and when you know that they are harmful to you over time, then you can start to become aware or conscious of what you're eating. And conscious eating, to me, is a game changer. Because not only are you asking yourself certain questions prior to consumption, you're also concerning yourselves about the nutrition of the food that you're eating. So, for example, when I'm consciously eating, I ask myself, what benefit does this have on my body? So, if I'm eating some fruit, I'm like, all right, I'm getting some vitamin C, I'm getting some vitamins, some minerals, I'm getting some water, I'm getting some fiber. Like, man, my body's gonna love this. Or if someone offers me a donut, I'm saying, all right, I'm gonna get no calories. Sorry, I'm going to get calories. I'm going to get empty calories. I'm going to get calories that my body does not need or use. I'm going to have sugar, refined sugar. What's that refined sugar going to do to my body? Well, it's going to cause inflammation. It's going to cause an insulin spike. It's going to make me tired later. It's going to cause brain fog. There's literally no benefit in me eating this right now. Like, there's nothing. And so that's what essentially conscious eating does. Conscious eating helps you become aware of what you're eating, and it directly relates to how nutritious you're considering, or how your nutrition is considered for your intake. So I'm going to leave you with this one last point. I have a toddler at home, and he has an overabundance of energy, and I always wonder where he got that energy from. And I remembered, when I was a kid and I just had all this energy and I was running around the house, and I was like, man, what would I do, or what could I do to get that energy again? And I'll tell you guys, when you stop having all that stuff, right? That stuff, that ultra processed foods, when you give that up, I don't know exactly what happens on a biochemical level, but you feel different. I think your body has more energy to do other things rather than repair itself from the bad decision you made, right? So with all that extra energy, I started running and exercising, and lo and behold, the energy that I had for running and exercising, it became almost necessary for my well-being, because I was able to use that energy to lose weight, to feel good, and to ultimately get more energy later. So what do I mean by that? So you eat well, you have more energy to work out. You have more energy to work out. Now you can work out. You can work out, you get healthier, you get slimmer, you have more energy to do other things that you might want to do in your life. So if you're, let's say, I don't know, a soccer coach, you can go to work all day, you have energy to do so. You can go to your soccer team and have the energy to actually work with them, and you're not exhausted enough to the point where when you get home, right, if you have a family, you have time for them. And then if you're like me, then you got time for them, and you might have to go do some homework, or you might have to go, work on your business. And so for me, it is way more productive to live this lifestyle. Way more productive. You can get so much more done. You have more energy. You have more brain energy to learn things, to expand your career, to expand your mind. It's your favorite color in the world, brown. And if you liked this content, please do me a favor, like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me and this journey of mine, and really help me spread this knowledge, this information about ultra processed foods and the dangers that it's really causing our communities.